Netflix is not usually the first place I go when I want to watch a messed up movie, but they just added a slew of scandalous flicks. In fact, I was all set to record this list and Netflix just added another NC-17 rated doozy that jumped all the way to the #1 spot.
That's not appropriate dinner conversation.
We've also got the movie that convinced Stanley Kubrick Nicole Kidman should star in Eyes Wide Shut. Plus, a super dark Korean hidden gem, The Cult of Jimmy. Even Paul Walker's darkest and most underrated movie made this list.
Are you ready?
So if you like movie recommendations from a real live person and not, these AI-generated lists you see all over YouTube nowadays, let the YouTube algorithm know you prefer this type of content instead by clicking the subscribe button. I'll return the favor by making sure you never run out of awesome stuff to watch. Awesome stuff like The Lazarus Project, which I think is one of Paul Walker's most underrated movies, and it's completely different from everything else he did in his career. He actually plays someone who's convicted and sentenced to the death penalty, but is given a second option, an experimental option at rehabilitation, and this ends up being a dark, twisted thriller in the vein of something like Shutter Island, done on a much lower budget without Martin Scorsese. So while it's not as good as something like Shutter Island, it's a similar type of film, and I think it'll really appeal to fans of Shutter Island, and I think fans of Paul Walker will be surprised how well he carries a movie like this. It's almost a shame he didn't do more like it. And it's loaded with twists and turns, a lot of stuff you're not going to see coming. Even though the title kind of gives some of it away, there are enough surprises in this movie to keep you on your toes. But another dark, hidden gem I've got on this list comes from South Korea, and it is a Netflix original, which means it's not probably ever going to leave the platform. It's titled The Call. Now this one has a time paradox element that's really interesting. You wouldn't call it a time travel movie, rather it has to do with this phone call or a series of phone calls that span a number of years. To make things even more complicated, there's a really twisted character in the mix. I'm not going to tell you which one because it is a surprise at some point, but this is like a darker Korean version of the movie Frequency, where, a father and son are able to communicate over a ham radio spanning about 30 years. This is a very similar setup, but goes into a much more twisted direction. And for a little Netflix original movie, it's really well put together because it all hinges on this time paradox thing where you're jumping back and forth. It needs to be well put together, and it definitely is. Certainly one of the cooler little Korean thrillers I've seen on Netflix. I recommend it here occasionally, but it is certainly one of those movies that fell through the cracks. Now, a movie that did not fall through the cracks, it was kind of a big deal back when it originally released, has been forgotten with time, and I don't think was ever truly appreciated for what it really is. Jennifer's Body, starring Megan Fox, is an incredible satire that I think went over most people's heads. Now, the reason I think it went over most people's heads is because this movie is aimed at a younger audience, and it's a much smarter movie than it appears. It appears that it's just a little sexy horror movie starring Megan Fox as this sort of demon character, and it is that, which is cool. I like that. I'm into it. But the high school environment that these kids are living in is hyper satirical. I say hyper, it's a weird mix. It's maybe not obvious at first how satirical it is, or at least how heavily layered it is, but that is what makes this movie rewatchable. Going back and actually picking up on all the little nuanced things you would not have expected there to be in this movie in the first place. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is like a Christopher Nolan level movie or anything. It's a sexy little horror movie starring Megan Fox, but it's got just enough of an edge and just enough of kind of a creative twist on the world building that it actually elevates it, and it created a cult following. This is a movie people still love and enjoy, but I think mass audiences completely miss the point, which means it's well worth going back and revisiting today. And if that's not enough Megan Fox for you, they also have Till Death, a really cool little thriller where she's actually handcuffed to a dead body for a big portion of the movie while trying to hide from guys trying to kill her. A surprisingly good thriller from Megan Fox, also on Netflix for a limited time. Now listen, I understand if you didn't like or appreciate the direction the new 28 Days Later movies have gone. with the 28 years later, and then the sequel to that, The Bone Temple. And I agree, the new movies went into a weird direction, multiple weird directions I would have never predicted. But now that they're done, now that they're out, even though I think they're less than perfect, I don't think it's like the perfect direction for this 28 Days Later story to have gone. The new ones feel very, very different from the original. Looking at them for what they are, I really like where they ended up. Now, I feel like they could have been a lot better. The direction that they went could have been much better. But again, with what we got, I liked it, especially The Bone Temple. It gets even weirder as they introduce the cult of Jimmy, led off by Jack O'Connell, who just had a killer year playing the villain in Sinners. He's a bad guy in this as well. Really great at it. He's one of my favorites doing bad guys today. He's so fantastic in this movie. But Ralph Fiennes returns in this as well. He's awesome in it too. This movie, the second one, The Bone Temple, has some really fantastic scenes in it. Now, I liked 28 Years Later. I thought it had some beautiful sequences in it, but once I realized where they were going and what they were doing with this Bone Temple movie, I thought it was a really cool direction. Ultimately, way out of left field, so different than anything I could have imagined, but still a pretty wild ride of a movie that had some great moments in it. So in conclusion, a couple of really weird sequels to one of the greatest zombie movies of all time, but they're weird in a way that I really liked and appreciated. Now, they made this list, I gotta warn you, especially the second one. There's a remove the shirt scene that is particularly disturbing, but ultimately, once you get to the climax of the Bone Temple, it's worth the journey to get there. It's a rough one, but it's worth it. Now, next up, I've got the least messed up movie on this list. Still features a really twisted concept and some twisted results in a relatively easily digestible Netflix original movie titled It's What's Inside.
Doesn't hurt at all, I swear.
Okay. Wait, Forrest. What is that?
It's just a 20-second experience. That's it. I promise.
So this is going to be the one for people who have a weak stomach. There's nothing too disgusting or revolting about this movie, but the concept will tie your brain in a knot. You see, this is sort of like a high school reunion, or rather there's a wedding coming up and a bunch of friends are getting back together for one night to have kind of a party, almost like a bachelor party thing that's co-ed. Anyway, one of them became sort of a tech wizard, made a ton of money, and shows up with this new device, this new piece of technology, and presents it as a game. They're actually able to swap bodies. They can move their consciousness around the group like a party game. And what's so great about this movie is it's like all one location, it's all a fairly low budget, there's no real special effects or anything. It's all the concept and then the delivery through the actors. It's fantastic. You're never sure who is who unless the movie wants you to know who's who. And when that happens, they have a neat little visual device that kind of lets you know who is who.
Freak out right now, okay? You're acting like a different person.
Don't look at me. I am a different person.
But it's a large group, you know. This is not like Freaky Friday where two people swap places and have to live in each other's shoes. No, they're trying to figure out who am I actually talking to? How am I being manipulated? Almost like a reality show set up in a sci-fi movie that has some funny elements too. It's a nice, well-rounded Netflix original movie that's a lot of fun and not nearly as repulsive as some of the other movies on this list.
Right.
Yeah. No. I don't know. What the
Like my next pick, which is conceptually the wildest thing on this entire list, but the way this one's delivered is like a horror comedy with Kevin Smith's Tusk.
A walrus saved your life?
The walrus is far more evolved than any man I've heard of, present company included.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's right. This movie's directed by Kevin Smith. I think a lot of people don't know that. And if you've never heard of the movie, Justin Long plays a young man who goes to visit a character, you know, kind of like someone he's wanting to do an article on, and this guy's a nut job. He's played by Michael Parks, who you probably recognize from Kill Bill. He plays two different roles in that movie. He is fantastic in this. In fact, his like fairly serious performance in this weird horror comedy is what elevates it and makes it this really cool, unique film. So to kind of give away the premise here, which is what the trailers do anyway, this nut job of a guy is obsessed with walruses and wants to turn just along into a human walrus. If that sounds a little bit familiar, this is basically a horror comedy version of The Human Centipede, but directed by Kevin Smith. It's every bit as weird as a Human Centipede, but manages to be much funnier. You also get an amazing cameo from Johnny Depp in this movie. He's unrecognizable, but if you pick up on who it is, it's a lot of fun. This one's every bit as dark and twisted as it sounds like it is, but it's also a lot of fun. It's a wild ride, and I think a lot more entertaining than the Human Centipede. But for another movie about someone turning into something horrible, I've got some honorable mentions, starting with Clown, a movie I haven't seen available on Netflix maybe ever. This one's about a guy who becomes cursed to turn into a clown. Anyway, he puts on this cursed clown costume and then basically slowly starts turning into this demonic version of a clown. It is every bit as dark as it sounds like. Has maybe some funny moments, but it is a dark, twisted flick. This one's really only for people who love those types of horror movies. But I'll also say I almost included The Black Phone 2. Netflix currently has The Black Phone and the new sequel that's pretty recent release. These are pretty cool movies. They're dark and twisted, very heavy on style, much more heavy on style over substance, but it's a slick style. I will say though, they're much darker and more depraved than most of your big budget horror movies. I'm honestly surprised Ethan Hawke is even involved in these movies. He's good in them as the killer, but they're so dark and twisted, you don't usually see big name actors in movies that are this macabre. And then Bone Lake is another one I almost included on the list. In fact, it might have been my number 11 pick. A sexy horror movie that's dark and twisted and honestly better than I would have expected. To me, this just seemed like a gimmick movie, a trick to get young people to go to the movie theater because it looks like a horror movie with a lot of sex in it. It's not really, even though there's a fair amount, but the sex is the concept in this movie. It's used to manipulate people, and it's the fulcrum that everything kind of twists and turns on, and it is a bit boilerplate, but I will say it turned out a lot better than I expected, but, to be fair, I was not expecting much. Now, coming up, we've got that Nicole Kidman flick that also stars Joaquin Phoenix, a very young Joaquin Phoenix, in an awesome dark little thriller. But before that, I'll let you know, if you want additional movie recommendations from me, I send out an email every single Friday. It's free to sign up. You can go to the website, use the QR code. All I ask for is an email address. That's all I need to send this to you. And the email features 5 movie recommendations from me, again, every Friday, and they're often movies I haven't touched on here on the channel yet. So if you want more from me, that's the best way to go about it. But my next pick just recently got added to Netflix, despite being kind of a lost hidden gem of the 90s, with To Die For.
Everybody has to start somewhere. Do you know where Edward R. Murrow started?
No, I don't.
No, well, neither do I offhand. But I don't think it was at the top. Do you?
Now, this is also loosely based on a true story. Nicole Kidman plays a reporter who's wanting her big break. She's wanting kind of a big break of a story, so she kind of invents one. She's wanting to do one on delinquent teens and crime, things like that. And so instead of just doing the story, she actually, she starts having sex with these young men in order to manipulate them into doing things she wants them to do, things she can then later report on. That's about as much as I can give away, but Nicole Kidman is so killer in this movie that it convinced Stanley Kubrick she should star in Eyes Wide Shut. You see, Tom Cruise was already cast in Eyes Wide Shut. They wanted to put his wife in. Kubrick was like, no, I need to pick the person who's the best for the role, not his wife. Like, I'm not doing that. He saw this movie, was blown away by her performance, picked her for Eyes Wide Shut, and her career has never been the same since. And I'll say, this movie holds up incredibly well. I've seen it in recent years, and it's still a dynamite watch, especially if you're the least bit interested in the setup. Not only is she fantastic, Joaquin Phoenix is great, Matt Dillon, just a really cool 90s gem that's been long forgotten. I'm honestly surprised to see Netflix include it. They rarely include cool movies like this.
It's nice to live in a country where life, liberty, and all the rest of it still stand for something.
And then another dark, twisted thriller that feels a lot like modern-day Alfred Hitchcock with a really salacious sex angle is Side Effects, directed by Steven Soderbergh. In this movie, you've got Rooney Mara, Channing Tatum, Jude Law is kind of the main character, also Catherine Zeta-Jones. Just an amazing cast, and it revolves around a murder. Rooney Mara kills her husband in seemingly cold blood, yet she was on these new pills that maybe caused some side effects. There goes the title. And that's just the setup. Like, that's just the beginning. This thing has all sorts of twists and turns you will not see coming. It's a movie that absolutely takes you by surprise multiple times, but also has this really sharp tone to it. Like I said, feels like modern day Alfred Hitchcock. One of the best little thrillers Steven Soderbergh has done. Sometimes he gets a little wild and funky with his thrillers. This one plays it very straight. It's very taut, very tight. And again, man, those reveals, once they start happening, it is a dynamite flick, which is why it's my number 3 pick on a list of some pretty amazing movies. Now, my number 2 pick on this list is very different from anything else we've discussed. It's a comedy, but it's much more of a dramedy than anything else. It's not nearly as dark and twisted as some of the things we've talked about, yet it is still so messed up. It's titled Red Rocket.
Peekaboo!
Mom!
See, your mom's saying, let him in and take a shower. And the dog's like, oh, he's a good man, I can tell by his nice energy. Please let me take a fucking shower.
In this one, Simon Rex plays a washed-up adult film star who's basically out on his butt. He takes a Greyhound bus back to the small Texas town where he's from and essentially has to beg for people to let him back into their lives. It is hilarious, and really only because of Simon Rex's character and the way that he plays him.
Look, I'm gonna be straight with you. I'm an adult film actor. Excuse me?
I love this character. Now, he's not a redeemable character whatsoever. He's an absolute dirtbag of a character, but that's what makes him so entertaining. He's so narcissistic.
I'm on top of my game right now on like every single possible level. Physical stamina, my mind is sharp. I'm taking 5-HTP for serotonin in my brain.
Yeah?
Yet such a good manipulator as well, takes advantage of every single person around him, and thinks he's just on top of the world the entire time. And the way it's done is so funny. I have known guys like this, not adult film stars, but guys like this in my life, and it's so funny to watch them basically destroy their life and the lives of everyone around them. Now, I know that sounds like a terrible thing to say. The way it's presented in Red Rocket is, oh God, it's so funny.
He sucker punched me. I would 100% out cardio that guy. Sorry for swearing.
I will say, I think this will appeal to fans of Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's not as silly or as goofy, but it's got kind of a natural flow to it and kind of a dry sense of humor as well. I'll say if you can get into the opening scene where he's first trying to worm his way back into his house with his wife, if you're into that, you're gonna love the whole movie. If you can't get into it in the first 10 minutes or so, I don't know, maybe it's not for you.
The universe is on my side, bro.
Before long, it'll be like we're still married.
We are still married.
And then, like I said at the top of the video, my number 1 pick came out of nowhere. I had this thing set. Red Rocket might have been my number 1 pick, but then they decided to go and add Killer Joe.
Of course, we never discussed the possibility of a retainer.
What do you mean? Hey man, you talking about my sister?
Is that who she is?
That's right, this is NC-17 rated, and it's the last big feature film from director William Friedkin, who's most famous for The Exorcist. He also did To Live and Die in L.A. and Sorcerer, a movie I recommend here all the time. Oh, and The French Connection, like one of my favorite movies of all time, the movie I named this channel after. Anyway, his last big theatrical release was titled Killer Joe, and this is an adaptation of a stage play written by Tracy Letts, who's also a really famous actor now. And the movie doesn't really feel like a stage play. You would never know that that was the case. Maybe when you get to the final sequence, which again is a doozy, you will never look at Fried Chicken the same way again. But the setup here, if you need to know the setup, is some guys hire a hitman played by Matthew McConaughey, and This hitman doesn't just want money, he wants their sister, played by Juno Temple. She's fantastic in this as well. And Matthew McConaughey is a wild man in this movie. Like, he's not just a hitman, he is a psychopath in this movie. And the whole thing has this dark cloud hanging over it. I think even the opening sequence starts in the middle of a thunderstorm. The entire movie has this dark vibe. And then, again, you get to the climax of Killer Joe, and it will blow your hair back. It's a weird, one-of-a-kind, raunchy, dark, twisted flick that is surprisingly entertaining and really well written and directed. It's a bizarre movie in that sense. There's nothing else I can think of that is this depraved, this dark, this twisted, that's also masterfully directed and written by a really accomplished playwright. Here is a recap of the list along with other streaming services currently hosting these movies. Obviously, all of them are on Netflix for the time being. But if you got a recommendation or two, leave the video a like. It's way more helpful than you would think. And don't forget to sign up for my free email newsletter if you want to get those messages every Friday. But I will keep making these as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for watching this messed up Netflix list, and you will see me on the next one.